Welcome to our podcast on Ethereum regulation and compliance. I'm Ira Bajpayee, your host, and today we have an insightful lineup of guests to discuss this vital topic. Joining me are Aruna, an Ethereum developer and thought leader in the space, Tika, a compliance specialist with deep knowledge of crypto regulations, Rindy, an active Ethereum user and investor. Thank you all for being here. Let's dive right in. Moving towards our first segment, understanding Ethereum's core. Let's start with the basics. Aruna, Ethereum is often described as a world computer. Could you elaborate on what that means in practice and how it differentiates Ethereum from traditional financial infrastructure?
Yeah, thank you, Ira. Thank you for hosting us today. So, in general, back in 2014, the dramatic realization that blockchain could play a role of the computer, and because the Ethereum was the first blockchain that could host Turing complete smart contracts, it led someone proposing the concept of world computer. And this actually refers to its decentralized global network of nodes that execute smart contracts. And what sets Ethereum apart of unlike traditional financial systems is permissionless and transparent. And I would also position it as a more energy efficient proof of stake model.
Aruna, that's exactly the problem right now without the regulations, but actors can take the advantage. We have seen the DeFi scams, rug pulls, and the hackers. How can users trust a system with no oversight right now?
Hold on, Tika. Traditional finance is full of corruption and inefficiencies. Ethereum give us as user financial freedom. Of course, the risk exists, but I think with the education and the better security, maybe we can address that problem.
Yeah, exactly. Ethereum isn't perfect, but decentralization is its strength. And with a proof of stake model, it's now more energy efficient too. The challenge is making the secure without compromising its core values.
It's interesting that you would mention proof of stake because Ethereum's shift to proof of stake is seen as a major milestone. Could you break down how this transition impacts transaction validation, security, and energy consumption?
Well, Ethereum transitioned to proof of stake, so the merge fundamentally changed how the transactions are validated and secured. And so instead of energy intensive mining, it reduces energy consumption by over 99%. And this shift enhances security by making attacks more expensive. And it also lowers barrier to entry for validators compared to mining hardware.
Yeah, agree with Aruna. For me as an user, I think Ethereum moved to proof of stake was a huge win. I think it's made the network more energy and efficient and scalable. But I think I get why some worry about the centralization, since a big staking provides hold a lot of Ethereum. That's why I support the decentralized staking option like a rocket pool.
Well, yeah, many people think that there is a risk of Ethereum might be more centralized, and yeah, I agree that mostly because the stake concentrated in large staking pools like Lido or Coinbase.
Speaking of complex decentralizations, from a technical standpoint, how does Ethereum's EVM, Ethereum Virtual Machine, enable developers to build these complex decentralized applications? And what security risk does this pose?
Well, the EVM is like a brain of Ethereum. It lets developers write a smart contract in the language like Solidity and run them on the blockchain. And this flexibility is that makes Ethereum so powerful for building decentralized apps. But it also introduces some risk. And if there is a bug in the code, it can be exploited, which is why security audit and best practices are absolutely crucial.
Well, I'll go a step ahead and say that Ethereum is not just powerful, it is also rapidly evolving. What trends are you seeing in layer 2 solutions and how are they helping improve scalability and user experience?
Okay, for me, I think the layer 2 solution like Arbitrum and the Optimism makes the Ethereum faster and cheaper while keeping its security. Zero knowledge rollups, ATA ZK rollups can boost the scalability and the privacy. It also lowering the fees and improving the user experience for the mainstream adoption.
Well, with the innovations like account abstractions on the horizon, how do you think Ethereum's user experience could shift for mainstream adoption?
Okay, I think for the account abstraction, it will make the Ethereum wallet as easy as the regular apps. It could enabling the automatic gas payment, the recovery option, and the smart security. This way, it simplifies the crypto for the everyday user and pushing the Ethereum toward the mainstream adoption.
That's quite insightful. Ethereum's cryptocurrency, on the other hand, ETH, has seen some major fluctuations in value. How do you see its role evolving in global finance, especially with the growth of institutional investors?
That's an interesting question. I think Ethereum is evolving beyond the cryptocurrency into the backbone of the decentralized finance. With staking, DeFi, and the layer 2 growth, its utility is clear. As the regulation improve, Ethereum will play a bigger role in the global finance. It's also could powering the smart contracts and the asset tokenization.
All right, now moving towards our segment two of regulatory landscape. Now let's hear from our regulation expert, Tika. Ethereum's decentralized nature challenges traditional regulatory frameworks. What key obstacles do regulators face when trying to apply existing financial laws to Ethereum-based protocols?
Yeah, the biggest challenge for regulators is Ethereum's full decentralizations, lacking a single accountable entity like banks. And another issue is compliance with the AML and the KYC regulations, as DeFi protocols often let users transact without identity verifications, at posing risk for money laundering and fraud. This bypasses the traditional mechanisms that track the suspicious activity. Some governments right now are pushing on chain KYC solutions requiring centralized exchange to monitor the DeFi transactions, but in other hand, this is contradicts basic with the decentralization concept right now.
Tika, can I ask you something?
Sure.
Uh, why does there need to be a someone accountable? I think blockchain is about the self-sovereignty. The user should take the responsibility instead of the relying on the regulator to bail them out, right?
Yeah, that's an idealistic view right now, but in the real world, people need to protections. If someone loses their life savings at the DeFi scam, should regulators simply say, "Oops, your fault"? Who's gonna take the responsibility?
Yeah, there is a middle ground actually. Developers can integrate now optional KYC mechanism to regulate DeFi sectors while keeping Ethereum base layer free and open.
It's clear that regulation can't be ignored, but the challenge is ensuring it doesn't kill Ethereum's core mission of decentralization. The best path forward may be flexible compliance models that empower both regulators and users. Now let's discuss the classification of certain Ethereum-based tokens as securities, which is a major topic of debate. Could you walk us through the complexities regulators face in defining these assets?
Yeah, it's true, Yura. The core issue with classifying the Ethereum-based token is that they don't all fit neatly into the traditional financial categories. Now we're typically using the frameworks like the Howey testing, to decide if an asset is security, meaning it represents an investment with an expectations of profit or no in the futures. But in other hand, the Ethereum-based token can serve multiple purposes, where some are utility tokens, while others are using for the investments such as government tokens and the DeFi projects. So I think the lines currently are very, very blurred, making it hard for us to create a one-size-fits-all rules. So the debate is really about balancing the innovations without killing the core principle itself.
Speaking of balancing the innovation, what role can smart contract audits and formal verification play in satisfying regulatory concerns without introducing bottlenecks in development?
Yeah, the smart contract audit and the formal verification can help the regulators ensure the compliance without hindering the innovations. The firms like CertiK or OpenZeppelin identified vulnerabilities pre-deployment, reducing the fraud, but the formal verifications proves of contracts correctness as well. It's very essential for DeFi and institutional adoptions, making audits a best practice rather than a burden keeps Ethereum secure, transparent, and scalable.
Let's speak global. The global regulation efforts vary significantly. How do you see the fragmented regulation impacting Ethereum adoption on an international scale?
Actually, there's no global regulations for Ethereum until today, and it's quite interesting. Different countries have completely different stances. Some embrace the Ethereums and the DeFi innovations, while some others are not. For example, the European Union have a MiCA regulations that provides a structural framework for Ethereum-based business, while in the US, they are still debating about the security issue for the Ethereum. But in contrast, in China, they has been banning all of the crypto trading for all types, but they are still supporting the blockchain innovation. These conditions make hard for the project with the Ethereum base to operate globally right now. And do you know the impact, the uncertainty of business like companies with Ethereum base might to relocate to the countries that with the crypto-friendly countries like Singapore or Dubai. It's leading the compliance arbitrage where they are finding ways to operate under the least restrictive rules.
Well, that's quite interesting to know. Looking at the recent developments, Ethereum's integration with major financial institutions had also gained traction. What regulatory challenges arise as Ethereum moves closer to the mainstream finance?
Yeah, that's a great point. As Ethereum integrates with financial institutions, adoptions of Ethereum staking and blockchain-based settlements by banks is increasing. However, this mainstream adoption brings new challenges as well, such as the compliance with traditional financial laws for KYC and the AML. And additionally, there are concerns about the systemic risk and the liability. If the Ethereum becomes core to financial infrastructure, who assumes responsibility in case of smart contract failures, hacking, or major price volatility?
That's a valid question, Tika. Moving towards our segment 3, compliance in practice. Let's explore the practical steps and hear from Rindy. DeFi platforms face scrutiny due to their lack of oversight. What steps do you take to mitigate risk when participating in DeFi protocols?
Well, for me, I always follow a few key steps to stay safe in DeFi. The first step is stick to the reputable platform. I only use the well-known auditable protocol like AV, Uniswap, and Lido. The second step is check the smart contract security. I look for the audits and the use tools like DeFi Safety and the Revo.gas to manage the permission. The next step is I diversify and manage the risk. I never invest more than I can afford to lose and spread funds across the different protocols. The last one and the most important thing is I need to stay updated. I follow DeFi news and the security alerts to avoid the loopholes and the hacks.
Wait, Rindy, that's a good practice, right? And you are doing great right now, but most people aren't that cautious. Should we really expect everyone to be their own compliance officer like you?
I think that's the point. Crypto is about the self-responsibility. Regulators shouldn't assume user are the clueless, right?
Okay.
Okay, next, how can individual users adopt best practices when managing self-custody wallets and ensuring compliance with their local tax regulations?
Okay, to manage the self-custody wallet safely, I always use the hardware wallet like Ledger or Trezor for storing my asset, and I never share my seed phrase and back it up securely. For the tax, keep the track of all transactions using tools like the coin tracking or Coinly, and make sure to report any gains or losses based on your local regulation. Staying organized and informed I think, is the key to staying compliant and safe.
Randy, let's discuss a recent case study. Tornado Cash faced regulatory action for facilitating anonymous transactions. What lessons can developers and regulators take from this event to improve compliance without undermining privacy tools?
For me as the user, I think regulators see the Tornado Cash case as a warning against the privacy tools and enabling the illicit activity. They emphasize the need for EML and the to KYC compliance while also balancing the innovation. Clear rules and help distinguish privacy misissue and ensuring the security without stifting the progress. Let's see what the regulator says.
Yeah, Randy, you are right. The tornado case underscores the need for stronger oversight of privacy tools in crypto. While privacy is important, completely anonymous transactions can lead to risk for money laundering as well, and the terrorist financing and illegal financial activities could be happen. We have to work with the developers to find the solutions that can balancing these conditions, I think.
Well, from what I hear, I think balance is the key. Moving towards our last segment, the future outlook. Let's hear from our Ethereum expert. Looking ahead with the rise of privacy preserving technologies like zero knowledge proofs, what potential challenges could arise in terms of balancing user privacy and regulatory demands?
Well, balancing privacy and regulation with zero knowledge proof is tricky, and ZKP is let users verify transactions without exposing data, which is great for privacy but makes it harder for regulators to track illegal activities. And the challenge is designing a system that allows selective disclosure. So projects like ZK Shrike are working on this, but it is tightrope walk between keeping users anonymous and meeting regulatory demands. But yeah, they are working on it.
Well, that's reassuring to hear. As institutions increasingly adopt Ethereum-based solutions, what regulatory shifts might we see in sectors like finance, healthcare, or supply chain management?
Yeah, as the Ethereum adoptions grows, the regulations will adapt to ensure the security, transparency, and the compliance. And in finance, expect stricter KYC and AML rules for DeFi and staking. And in the healthcare industries, blockchain-based records will need to meet privacy laws like the GDPR in the Europe. And for the supply chains, regulators may enforce the blockchain's reporting standard for the authenticity and the sustainability tracking. The challenge is balancing the innovations with regulations across the industries right now.
And Rindy, the Ethereum community has been proactive in fostering innovation. How do you see grassroots movement playing a role in promoting responsible adoption of Ethereum?
Well, I think the grassroots movement, they play a key role in educating users on the Ethereum security, decentralizing, and the ethics. Through the event and the workshop, they make the blockchain more accessible and fostering it responsible and informed community.
Finally, if you had to predict Ethereum's regulatory standing 5 years from now, what do you think the most significant change will be?
I think in 5 years, I predict that the Ethereum will be more regulated but widely adopted as well, with licensed DeFi, institutional ETFs, and the clearer compliance rules. And the biggest change, a balance between decentralizations and regulation, will shaping how the Ethereums evolve.
Yeah, I agree with Tika. Ethereum regulator standing will probably look a lot clearer right now, but we will likely have better frameworks for DeFi, NFTs, and smart contracts with regulators trying to balance innovation and customer protection. Yeah, they might push into QIC and AML integration at the application level in 5 years, but they will probably leave the network itself decentralized. And in my opinion, governments might also even recognize Ethereum as a crucial infrastructure, which could lead to more collaboration instead of constant tension.
What a complicated future for the regulator and developer. But for me, I believe the Ethereum will still decentralize. It's still innovating and will still giving the people the financial freedom.
Fantastic insights from all of you. Before we wrap up, any final thoughts?
For me, I think I'm really bullish about the Ethereum, especially with the layer 2 solution scaling the network. I think the future of the Ethereum looks so strong.
Ethereum for me will be stay, but its future depends on smart regulations, and the key will be collaborations between the regulators, developers, and also the institutions to create a fair and secure blockchain ecosystem.
Look, yeah, we know regulation is coming and it is inevitable, but if we approach it with collaboration and creativity, it could actually strengthen Ethereum's position at a backbone of Web3 rather than holding it back. And keeping users safe while letting Ethereum innovation run full speed ahead, that's a balance we need to strike.
So we can safely say that balance is the future for Ethereum. Thank you all for your time and expertise. To our listeners, stay informed and stay safe in the crypto space. Until next time.